story about my wife anyway. She'll be mad, but I'll tell you anyway. We were talking last week on, what did I preach on last week? Witchcraft. Thank you. We, for years, my wife and I, we would go to a Chinese restaurant, we'd get a fortune cookie. And I love to break that fortune cookie out and say to her before we read it, is this yours or mine? And then she'd tell me, yours or mine. And we'd laugh. It was all great fun to me. My wife down the road got convicted that we couldn't do it anymore. She decided it was a form of astrology and fortune telling and witchcraft. And no how much I argued with her that that was silly, it's just something I do for fun. I just like to say, is it yours or mine? Because we know it can't come true. But she wasn't having it. She just felt it was like opening the door. So for all these years now, I'm still not happy that I can't just say, is this my fortune or yours? But it was a big deal to her. It happened again, because she didn't want to open the door to anything that was ungodly. When I got my dog, I wanted to name my Doberman Zeus. You know, Greek god, Zeus. Unless he wasn't having that either. No, that's a false god. You can't name him after a god. And I'm like, look, lady, this is my dog. Zeus, if anything, it's another form of disrespecting their right. I named a dog after their god. So I'll name my dog whatever I want. Yeah, his name is Caesar. So, my point is, you can go one side and say, oh, too much, too much. But if you go the other way, you find yourself absolutely lost. My wife acted as my barometer. I didn't see anything wrong with the fortune stuff. I still don't. I think it's in fun. But if for 1 second it bothers her, that's good enough for me. If for 1 second it might open the door to Satan, that's good enough for me. So, on the call last week, I was going to mention that. She pointed out when we got home, well, hot shot, you missed a whole 2 pages of your sermon. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it. And I left all that part out, so now I got it. All right, my brother Stu and I have a lot in common. Me and Stu, we share a lot of things. One of the things that we share is hate. Me and my brother Stu, we hate the way veterans are being treated. Not only in different posts, but in America as a country. Stu and I hate it so much that we voice it when we're with each other about what veterans are suffering from currently. Stu hates it so much that he's a service officer for our post. And because he knows that there are so many veterans struggling to get what they deserve and what they've earned, he has stepped up and donated his time, his efforts, and his money to help these veterans get what they want. Why? Because he hates the way veterans are being treated. And him and I have that in common. My brother Hart's over here, him and I got some hate in common too. You may not know it, but Hart's was a former president and gang member of the motorcycle gang that we banged with. And in his early days, he was a chapter president, and then he became a nomad. And as we went up through the ranks, Hart's and I started to hate the same thing. We hated the way that the phony brotherhood at the top of our club was packaged and sold. Hart's and I found out that the way the bosses and the leaders package the concept of brotherhood and love is so false at the top, where they're just stealing and making their own way, but they sell it to the younger foolish guys. And Hart's and I hate that. And pick any club, any patch, it doesn't matter. It's all the same lie. Then there's my brother Highway. We got a lot in common, including we both hate his phone. First, I hate how when I'm sitting with him, and all of a sudden he starts acting like he's got a disability and he has a seizure, and he starts whacking himself in the head. I hate that. But see, his phone is connected to his hearing aid, so he's got to tap it to answer it. Boy, that's irritating. Looks like he's got a disability. But also I hate that no matter whether he's next door or in Montana, when I call him, that phone's going to drop the call 3 or 4 times before we finish our conversation. I hate that about his phone. So does he. We also hate that the only thing his phone lets in is spam calls. And boy, does it let them in. We hate that by the hundreds. The highway, just something that we hate, man. It's just, it's the way it is. The idea of hating is something that absolutely positively God understands. So our question today is simply this. Is it okay for a Christian to hate? Let me see the slide. Intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or a sense of injury. It's not that you're just intolerant of something. No. It's not that you just feel something's been wronged? No, that would be anger. Hate is an intense hostility, and it's an actual aversion. And it's something that God is very familiar with. So to answer you, is it okay for a Christian to hate? I'll do you one better. You are commanded to hate. So the answer is it okay for a Christian to hate? Yes. Is it okay for a Christian to hate? Well, no, it's not. See, because we're also commanded not to hate. If you're confused, it's okay. I'm not. I'm going to explain it to you. Hate is the second most powerful emotion. Hate is something God understands. Hate is solid. Hate is something God can get behind because he started it. Yep. I said God understands hate because he started it. See, in heaven, before man ever sinned, there was hate. There was godly, righteous, correct hate. See, when pride entered Lucifer, and him and 1/3 of the boys all got puffed up and got full of their created selves and wanted to take over heaven, God hated that. God hated it so much, he said, no way, you ungrateful, created creatures that think so much of yourselves. How do we know that he was just not unhappy? Well, because he could have just thrown him out of heaven. The great place to be. God was just mad or angry, he could have thrown him out of heaven. Besides, he told us that he hated it. What else proves how much he hated the pride and the arrogance of his created being? What tells you is he went the next step. After throwing Lucifer out, what did he do? He created hell. That's going the extra mile. He didn't just throw Lucifer and 1/3 of the angels out of heaven. He then went so far, because he was so angry and hated what they did so much, that he then went and created a special place of pain and torment and darkness, which is separation from him. Because he said, if that's what you angels want, you think you're better than everybody else, you created beings, you want to take over heaven? Not only am I throwing you out of heaven, but I'm going to put you in a place where you will forever be separated from me. And the angels found out exactly what pain was when God threw them out and created hell. But he created hell for them, not for us. But unfortunately, we've decided that that's where some of us are going to go. See, hate is so powerful. It's so infectious. It's so contagious. It's so big that all alone, no other sin in your life will send you to hell except for hating something that God does not hate. God cannot let hate enter heaven. He has to deal with your heart before you get there, because it's absolutely contrary to his nature. Even though we say, you just got done telling me God hates. That's right. God hates what he considers to be sinful. But a lot of the stuff that we hate as individuals, as humans, we are not allowed to hate, we should not hate, and there's nothing more than stupidity on our part. Hate will send you to hell. See, hatred is a feeling that can be both godly and sinful, depending on what's causing you to hate. The Bible speaks of a loving God and hating evil, but he also says to hate the assembly of evil. I mentioned when Dawn and I went to Vegas, one could argue, well, you were with the assembly of sinners at Sin City. That's not accurate. My point when we were in Vegas was that at no point should Christ come back, who we were assembled with would not have been evildoers. We weren't in topless bars. We weren't in any things that we shouldn't be in. We weren't doing anything that we'd be ashamed of. So even though we were in a city that had a lot of sin going on, we did not assemble with those sinners that were doing sinful things. We went ahead and enjoyed the magic show that we wanted to see and the stuff that we wanted to do, but we didn't get involved. We hated the assembly of those that were doing sinful things. Lord hates evil. He guards the lives of his faithful ones and delivers them from the hand of the wicked. Now this is important. I abhor, I hate, I will not tolerate, I will not allow the assembly of evildoers and refuse to sit with the wicked. Now that's a charge right to you guys. You can't say, well, now, Pastor, Jesus hung out with all the hookers and the thieves. Nice try. Jesus was getting ready to die for those people. You're not. I'm not telling you who you can hang out with. I'm saying that if you are hanging out with something that you know God has convicted you of as evil, not good, as bad for you, God won't tolerate any excuses as to why you're still hanging out that way. He created hell for those of us that can't seem to get the hate out of our heart. The more we Christians are supposed to do and work towards the end, the more we should be becoming like Christ. Every day. Whether it's only inches a day that we move to be more like Jesus' example, or large moves. The idea is that the more we get in tune with Christ's nature, then the more we're going to understand the nature of God and what he wants from us. See, that progress should also bring with it a stronger will to hate hypocrisy, godlessness, and the horrible evil in our world. However, we are warned over and over and over in the Bible, in God's holy word, in the inspired writings, that hatred and bitterness can and it will destroy us. You see, since God created us, he's the most qualified to know that hatred is an issue of the heart. Not the blood-pumping organ, never mind that, but it's the issue of the mind, the thoughts and the desires of a person. That's what a person's heart is. And when we hate, when we get angry at each other, when we have ill feelings for one another, God says that that actually makes us murderers in John. I hate anyone who hates his brother or sister is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has eternal life residing in him. Meaning hating your brother, you're not going to get into heaven with that. See, God knew in the creation of our bodies how harmful hate was. Not only will it murder the people that you hate, but you will murder yourself spiritually, but also physically. I can tell you both, as an RN and someone experienced in this, that hate produces a certain set of chemicals. When you hate, it's different than anger. When you hate with that abhorrence, with that bitterness, you start to release aldosterone and norepinephrine and a couple more chemicals into the body. And God knew, since he created the body, that the release of those chemicals in that quantity will destroy the human body. It will eat it up. It will age you. It will cause good cells, as it's flowing through your body, when it comes across those cells that have the hate chemicals in it, it attacks them. It'll destroy your life. Just hate will physically destroy your body. You'll murder yourself. God knows that. That's why he told us. You'll kill yourself as well as the person, because he knew the chemicals being released. How funny. The Creator then made the opposite reaction for the emotion of love. The emotion of love releases another set of chemicals, completely opposite to the ones that hate releases. These chemicals, dopamine, progesterone, cortisol, these hormones help you. In fact, these hormones can repair damaged cells, add longevity to your life, and just help you feel better to go through it. Here's what science has pegged it at. If you're angry for at least 1 hour a day, for 5 days a week, okay? It's only 5 hours a week. You will cut your lifespan by 7 years. Woohoo! Just being mad for 1 hour a day for 5 days a week, and you take 7 years off your life. By the same token, science has proven that those that love, they're either involved in loving activities, they're with a loving mate, they have a loving family, they're involved in the community. Those that actually demonstrate love live 7 to 15 years longer. Choice is yours. God made the body. He knows how it works. He's given us pretty good instructions on it. You see, church, not only are we encouraged to love one another, but we're commanded to. If we don't keep a record of wrongs, we're doing what God wanted us to do. If we're quick to forgive, if we stop harboring bitterness and secret angers in our heart, then we've met the standard. See, it's hard, though, as we go through every day, to not get mad at someone, something, some idea, some place, some thought, some incident, some clown, and you know what's going to happen. Satan has spent thousands of years studying humans, God's special little creatures, God's little people that he made in his own image. Satan knows. History has proved Satan right time and time and time again. And what is it proven? Satan saying, just a little bit of hate, just a smidgen, just crack the door. And by the time I add a little injustice, a little prejudice, a little bias, I sprinkle in a liberal amount of pride and arrogance, and then I attach, you're doing it for God, for Allah. By the time I do all that, I give you a massacre. I give you dead women and children and babies at a rock concert. I give you 300 dead babies in a bombed out hospital, all in God's name. Whole cities bombed and destroyed. Give me a chance and I'll kill 6 million people for you. Out of hate. Still, John 2, 9, 11. Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates his brother or sister, you're still in the darkness. Anyone who loves their brother or sister, that you live in the light. And there's nothing to make you stumble, because you got to get rid of that hate. Anyone who hates his brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in it. They don't know where they're going because they're in the dark and they're blinded. You know, still knowing that all hate leads to this, we hate on. Sometimes it's subtle, not hate, not anger, just a little pride. Then I feel my race, my roots, my people, they're not getting a fair shake. I got to stand up for my people. Then this leads me to feeling attacked and in danger and compromised and unrespected. And it puts my people in danger. And before you can blink your eyes, I'm in a full-grown hate group. And it doesn't matter what group. It doesn't matter what color or what ideas you started out believing in. You simply end up hating others based on the hate that's inside of you. I don't care if these groups wear a big cross on their hate, or they cover their faces, or they kill over the color of a bandana. None of that matters. God is never a part of that. God does not allow, He does not condone, He does not tolerate, He will not look away from, and He will not practice or participate in hate. See, the problem with all these groups and all these organizations that are out there to the far left or the far right, they all start out trying to be warm and fuzzy, but then that leads to being prideful and firm, and then that leads to being disrespected and unacknowledged, and from there we start morphing. The federal government has listed hate groups and actually put them on a list and says that hate by their policies and their politics is insidious to Americans. Those groups that the FBI have named go from the BLM movement, the Black Lives Movement, to the KKK. From the Aryan Brotherhood to the Black Panthers. They all end up with all their ideals, their mantras, their philosophy, ending and remembered for nothing but pure hate. All of their philosophy, all of their theology is lost in the hate that they produce. That evil that hides behind and within hate is so out of control that we have actually added it as a crime in America. It's the only emotion that's ever been legally passed a law against. It's so disastrous that we have made hate in America a separate crime. Rob somebody, get charged with robbery, and say you robbed them because they were Muslim or Jewish or Christian or black or gay or whatever. You are then charged with a separate hate crime. Even our broken and flawed law recognizes the destructive power of hate. Look, don't misunderstand me. God hates and God hates good. God has stuff that He won't tolerate, and He tells you that. But see, God gets to hate because God is our creator. The slide in Psalms tells us that God hates the wicked. 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to Him. You know, I look at the list and some of it just seems to me that I would say back to God, aren't there bigger things than this on the list? Haughty eyes? Really, God? I'm not sure what haughty is, but haughty eyes? Well, I had to look it up. I had to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And it's talking about simply that prideful look when you look down at other people. When they come in and in your heart you start judging them right away. So look at their shoes. Look what they drive up in. That's haughty. Meaning above everybody else. Better than everybody else. Lord hates it. lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, the anti-abortion clause that we all claim to, but that the other churches and some of the folks refuse to recognize. They say, we're shedding innocent blood. Yeah, but a woman has a right to her own body. She can do whatever she wants with her own body. Let's say I agree with that, and I say that's what we should pass into law. A woman has the right to do with her own body, and the right is so sovereign, it's so pure, nothing can be done to take that right away from a woman to control her own body. Now the problem I think that presents is, what if the baby you're going to abort is a girl? According to the law, she has the absolute sovereign right to her own body. You can't murder her without her opinion, without her vote, without her consent. Not if we pass a law that says the woman has the right 100%. The husband or the father doesn't get to say, that's my child, don't abort it. It's her right because it's her body. If we buy into that, then what about the rights of the baby? If it's a female, she has a right to her own body and nobody should be killing her. That's how silly though the concept is, because God says it's just innocent blood. You don't have to differentiate female or male. You're not allowed to shed innocent blood. A heart that devises wicked schemes. Man, that's half my brothers. Half of the boys I banged with have spent their whole lives devising schemes. It's how they get by every day. But you don't get by God with that. He sees your heart. He knows what you're doing. He knows the secret stuff that you think nobody else sees. And he's going to judge you for it. He says he is. Feet that are quick to rush to evil. A false witness who pours out lies. And a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Do they sound like stuff that's so severe that God would hate it? I mean, not just make them mad. Shouldn't it be stuff on there like, God hates letting the poor suffer and not get any food. God hates you being poor. He wants you to have money. God hates that thousands of dogs are not being killed. I just see stuff that we have socially that strikes me, who don't know nothing, is bigger than some of this stuff. But then I realize that these 7 are the core for how I interact with everybody else. These 7 tell me all about me and my action with somebody else. So that takes me back to why it's so important. I may not think haughty eyes are a big deal, but God does, because he says, treat your brother like you want to be treated. So if you're looking down at your brother, God's saying, don't you understand? I'm going to look down at you if you've got haughty eyes. If you lie, don't you understand? This is what you're going to get back. And we don't. We think that we should be able to get away with that stuff because it's not that big of a deal. But it's such a big deal to God. He hates it. Not just angry, he hates it. It's okay to hate what God hates. But you have to also be offended by what God is offended by. Now, God may not call you to act on something just because you and him now understand why he hates it. But he does demand that you understand where he's coming from when he hates something, even if you don't have to participate, even if it requires no action on your part. You need to understand where he stands on abortion, let's say, even if you're not going to rallies and participating, because he demands between you and him that you get what's going on. This does not give us a license to hate. The righteous hatred from God should never be directed at a person. That's between God and them. You don't get to judge whether or not they are walking the way they should walk. You don't get to judge whether they're going to heaven and hell. Matthew 7, 1 through 5 tells us, if you judge that way, you're going to be judged. For the same way you judge others, you'll be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. And this is really important for my next point about hate. So you really got to get this. You will be judged with the same measure you use. It will be measured to you. All right, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye? Pay no attention to the plank in your own, no. How can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a great big giant board right in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take care of your own eye so that you can see better, and then you'll be able to see more clearly. The part that's important to me, I think, that you need to get is, for the same way you judge others, you're going to be judged. For the same measure you give someone else is what God's going to give you. Okay. You got to go through your day hating the evil that Satan and humans cause in this world, while still loving the person perpetrating it. And that's a tough job, folks. Each day of life I'm blessed with, it becomes more clear to me the more I move, even if it's only inches, the more I move towards being Christ-like, the more I have actually understood what Jesus requires of me. Whether inches or miles, the concept is to always be moving towards the nature of Jesus Christ. I know I don't get to pick and choose what you call sin. I don't get to pick and choose what qualifies. 1 John 4:20 tells us that whoever claims to love God but yet hates his brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister, whom they have seen, then you can't love God who you haven't. You got to go through your day knowing what God hates and only hating that. And you've got to curb the unbridled hatred in your own life. God says, if I live my life perfectly and think that I have never sinned, but I have any anger in my heart, I'm going to hell. Even though I've kept all the other laws. All right, how does that leave us then? Hate as a saved and forgiven being. How am I to go through my day hating what I'm supposed to hate and not hating the things that confront me? Well, we can start by the concept that we should never hate anyone. Anyone that we don't want God to apply the same level of hate to us. This is why this is so important. This is the part where I say, and God is going to give you back measure for measure. Now, church, this is so important. You've got to get it. That means that we can change the phrase, love one another as you want God to love you. Forgive each other as you want God to forgive you. Treat each other the way you want God to treat you. You know what y'all can change it to? I tell you today, church, if you have hate towards someone, if you refuse to give forgiveness to someone for a slight or for an error, if you maintain that hate, you are saying this to God. Okay, God, hate me, but only as much as I'm hating somebody else. See, that's the exact same of, only judge me the way I judge my brother. Forgive me as much as I forgive my brother. Love me as much as I love my brother. So if I love my brother not at all, and I have hate in my heart, I'm saying to God, okay, hate me, but only as much as I hate my brother. Wow. I find that absolutely crazy. I find it insane. Hate me, God, but hate me only as much as I hate my mother-in-law. No, I love my mother-in-law, but I hear that a lot. They hate their mother-in-law. It destroys their lives. It gets in their business. They hate it. But God, only hate me as much as I hate her. Who would say that? Hate me, God, as much as I hate my neighbor. Hate me, God, but only hate me as bad as I hate people of a different color, their race, their religion, or a different belief, because they smell different, or because their family is, whatever. God, hate me, but only that much. Man, that's crazy. How do you not grasp that concept that that's what you're saying? Hate me, God, but only as much as I hate this other person. It's so important. Jesus says it's the second greatest commandment. He gives you the first one, love God with all your heart. But he says, number 2, you can throw all the other commandments away. Just follow this one. God, hate me, but only as much as I hate my brother. If you have no hate and you have love, that's what you're saying. Then God, love me as much as I love my brother. Forgive me as much as I'm willing to forgive. But if you're unwilling, if every time the light changes and someone goes ahead of you and you get hate in your heart, if someone walks by and it irritates you just that they're sucking up the same good air that you're sucking up, I'm telling you, you're going to hell with that hate in your heart. Because you're telling God, only hate me that much. Don't hate me more. But it's okay for you to hate me because I hate this guy. I just find that insane. So what do? Amos 5:15 tells us that we're supposed to hate evil and love God. Maintain justice in the courts. Perhaps the Lord God Almighty will have mercy on the remnant of Joseph and the rest of the Israelites. But hate evil and love good. It's what our command is, but it just seems so hard for us to do. It seems so simple, so straightforward, but it's still tripping up the whole world. See, the false preachers say you should hate being poor. That's what you should hate. Matthew 6:24 says otherwise. Matthew 6:24 says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. And then he adds, you cannot serve both God and money. Why would the prophet, when talking about hate, instead of listing anything else, just simply list that? Money. You cannot serve both God and money. Well, so much for the prosperity preachers. Those false preachers say you should hate being poor. See, hate is going to be used by Satan to usher in the Antichrist. The Bible says, in John 3:15, that the false one will first say, we have to put a stop to hate. Hatred is wrong. Let me John.
I didn't do it, I missed it.
Oh, okay. Let me Leviticus. Do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly. It's okay, you can tell him, hey, that ain't right. But so you don't share in the guilt. But don't seek revenge or bear a grudge against any among your people. But love your neighbor as yourself, that I am the Lord. He's going to give you the same measure of love and hate that you give that person next to you. God's going to give it back to you. See, there are many paths to God some people want you to believe. But they'll start with hate. They create hate first. Then they help you create hate for those around you. Then they offer to save you from it. Oh, the whole world's now hating everybody. I'm going to bring peace. I'll bring all the religions together. I'll bring all the nations together. First they teach us how to hate. They divide us. And then they're going to offer us the solution to not hating anymore. And that's going to be when they usher in the Antichrist. The hate that's in a man's heart is going to destroy his marriage. The Bible tells us that. It'll destroy his family. It'll prevent friendships. It'll break up current ones. It'll destroy camaraderie. It will destroy your physical body. It will allow Satan to run rampant in your life simply because Satan hates everybody just as much as you do, if not more. You think you hate some folks? Satan wants us all to go to hell. Satan is so ate up with God's little special creatures, us, that he made in his image, that hate is something that Satan really gets in front of and knows how to drive. You have the choice. You can roll with that every day. And Satan will give you something to hate every time you turn around. Or you can simply understand that even though you've been wrong, however measure you hate, you're asking God to hate you back that same way. Look, let's show you how Christ handles it. When we know that the hate will destroy us, we got to look to the example of the man on the cross. So there he is. He's hanging on the cross. The hate from the Romans is so thick, you can smell it. The acid hate and the lust for his death from the Pharisees and for those in the crowd swirled all around him. He even had to endure hatred and scorn from the clown hanging next to him on the cross. I mean, can we say, oh God, I hate because of this, I hate because of that, and say that God doesn't understand our hate? He's dying on the cross for these people, and the Romans hate him and want his death. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Jews hate him and want his death. And he's got to listen to the clown hanging next to him telling him he deserves it. So, how did Christ handle all that hatred? Well, in his final moments, as the blood drained from his beaten and crushed body, our crucified Lord said in the last minutes of humanness, he gives us this answer. Jesus tells us exactly how to deal with hate in the world. He says it in his death, Luke 23, where he says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what to do. Now, he says that to God. He's not addressing specifically the thief on his right, but he's included. He's saying, Father, forgive this fool on my right that's saying I deserve death and anger. Forgive the Pharisees, the Sadducees. Forgive the Romans. Forgive my own disciples for not being here and leaving me. John, I see you're the only one here. Take care of my mother. God felt all of that. And yet he showed us then, how do we deal with it? he said, first of all, forgive them. But then he also showed us how he dealt with the two thieves. The one that hated him was going to hell. But the one that simply said, you're an innocent man. I don't hate you. I recognize that you're an innocent man and you don't deserve to be here. He goes on to say to that guy, I tell you today, you're going to be with me in paradise. What better example of how to handle hate? He's overwhelmed with it on all sides, and he's got one person that says he doesn't deserve it. So how do we handle the hate? We forgive the multitude that hates us, knowing that it's because Satan drives them. Number one. And then number two, we forgive any wrongs done to us. And we continue on with our day that way. It's so important that we follow Christ's example. He could have, from the cross, finally rebuked all of them. He could have lashed out to his disciples who all ran away. He could have told the Pharisees and the Sadducees, I'll see you suckers in 3 days. He could have told the Romans, I'm going to kill every one of your children today when I die. I'm going to send the angel of death to all your houses. He didn't do any of that. In spite of the hate and the anger and the animosity, the fact that they were taking his very blood and his very body from him, he said, I love y'all. I'm doing it for y'all. And Father, forgive them. Don't hold them accountable for my death. And now we're not. And now because he died for us, we could say we're accountable. It's our fault that Jesus went to the cross. He said it's not. And if you folks will just go through your day not hating like I didn't hate, even though I had every right to hate, I promise you that's what it'll be like in paradise. That's what he tells us. He continued to show us how to respond to hate when he turned to the one thief and said, your sins are forgiven. Those are his lessons. Those are God's instructions. We are, with our free will, of course, free to do whatever we choose. But if you're saying to God, forgive me like I forgive my neighbor, are you saying to God, hate me like I hate my neighbor? Never blame your choices on God. Never blame you going to hell on God. Never blame your unhappiness or your loss of peace on the God that literally stands by every day just to talk with you and to take that hatred and that anger away. But we get so busy we forget it. We don't pray, we don't talk, we just hate. I love y'all, but be careful, because hate will carry you right into hell. That's the end of today's sermon, but I do want Highway to come up and see if we can make the church smile, because I know that whole thing on hate got somebody upset. Highway, come up here and make the church smile. Well, that's nice.
I'd like to thank you all for coming in here. Most of you know me, and for those who don't, you don't know how blessed you really are. I hate that I'm at the age where I can't keep track of all the things I hate. That's where I stand right now. But it's not a stretch. If you think about it, God taught a snake how to talk in the Garden of Eden. You know, he talked to Adam's wife. So it's not a stretch to think that he could teach a couple of chickens to talk. So these two chickens were walking through the barnyard, and one chicken says to the other chicken, he says, man, I hate that farmer. Every Monday he comes and steals all my eggs. I hate him. And the other guy says, well, I can understand that. So the chicken asked him, he said, well, who do you hate? He says, Colonel Sanders. All right, well, that's what I got. Thank you folks for coming in, and God bless you all. I hope you have a great week.
God, tell you.